The Prisoner of Zenda. Chapter 1. I was eating breakfast in the dining room of my brother's house one sunny morning, thinking about what I would do that week, when my brother's wife Rose came into the room. "Rodolphe, you are 29 years old," she said. "Are you ever going to do anything useful?" "Rose," I answered, putting down my egg spoon. "Why should I do anything? I have nearly enough money to do anything I want to." "No one ever has quite enough money to do that, of course. And I enjoy an important position in society. My brother is Lord Burlesdon, and you are a countess." "But you have done nothing except..." "Be lazy? It's true. I'm a member of the Zenda family, and our family don't need to do things." This annoyed Rose, because her family were rich, but less important than the Zendals. At this moment, my brother Lord Burlesdon, who were happy to call simply Robert, came into the room. "Robert, I'm so happy you are back," cried Rose. "What's the matter, my dear?" Robert asked her. "She's angry because she thinks I don't do anything," I explained to my brother. At this point, I should explain that I hadn't been lazy all my life. I had studied hard and learned a lot when I was at the German school and German university. I spoke German as well as I spoke English, and I also knew how to speak French, Italian, and Spanish. I was good with a gun and strong swordsman. I was also very good at riding a horse. "It's not just your red hair that makes you different from your brother," said Rose. "He also realizes his position in society has responsibilities. You only see opportunities in use." "To a man like me, Rose, opportunities are responsibilities," I explained. "Good, because I have some news for you," said Rose. "So Jacob Burdale tells me he will offer you a real opportunity. He's going to be an ambassador in 6 months' time, and he says he's happy for you to work for him. I hope you will take this job, Rodolphe." My sister-in-law has a way of asking people to do things which is impossible to refuse. Moreover, I thought this job sounded quite interesting. So I said, "If in 6 months' time I'm in a position to take the job, then I'll certainly say yes." "Oh, Rodolphe, how good of you," said Rose. "Where will he be working?" I asked. "So Jacob doesn't know which country it will be, but he's sure it will be a good MC." "For you, Rose, I'll do it, even if it's a terrible MC," I replied. Now, I had made my promise to Rose, but there were still 6 months to go before the job would start, and I began to think about what I could do in this time. I decided that I would visit Mauritania, a small country in the middle of Europe. My family have always had an interest in that country because in 1733, Count Emilia Rozenol married a member of the Mauritanian family, the Elfbergs. In fact, my brother has paintings of her and her descendants. On his walls, many of them have the same red hair and straight noses as the Elfbergs. I'm the latest one to have the appearance of the Mauritanian royal family. My decision was held with a few days later when I read in the Times newspaper that Rodolphe V was to become king of Mauritania in the next 3 weeks, and that amazing celebrations were planned for this joyous occasion. I thought how fantastic it would be to see such an event, and began to prepare for my journey. I don't like to tell people where I go on my travels, so I told Rose that I was going walking in the Alps. I didn't want her to think I was being lazy either, so I told her I was going to write a book about social problems in the country. You are going to write a book? That would be such a good thing to do. Wouldn't it, Robert? Said Rose. Yes, indeed. Writing a book is the best way to get into politics, agreed Robert. And he should know, as he has written many books himself. You're right, I say to them both. However, I had no plan to really write a book, which shows how little we know about the future, because here I'm now writing a book as I had promised to do, even if the book has nothing to do with the social problems in the Alps. But let me begin near the start of my journey to Ruritania. My Uncle William always said that no man should ever pass through Paris without spending 24 hours in the city. So I took his advice and booked a night at the Continental Hotel. As soon as I had it checked in, I called on some older friends that I knew in the French capital. George Featherly, who worked at the MC, and Bertrand, who was now a famous journalist in the city. That evening, we all ate in a restaurant, and they told me all about the latest exciting events in Paris. We have had quite a few important people visiting the city recently, said Bertrand. Anyone I know? I asked. Well, I met Antoinette de Maupin today, Bertrand replied. You have probably heard of her. She's a lady who is well known for her wealth and ambition. But she's leaving Paris today. We don't know where she's going to next. So, why did she come to Paris? I asked. She was a guest of the Duke of Strelsau, said George. I met him at the MC yesterday. He is the half-brother to the King of Ruritania. People say he was his father's favorite son. He has gone back for the coronation, although I don't think he will enjoy it very much, because he probably wishes he were the king. I don't think he likes being only a duke. I hear he's a clever man, though, said Bertrand. He is extremely clever, I'd say, agreed George. The next day, George came with me to the station, and I bought a ticket to my next stop, Dresden. I didn't tell him that I was going to Ruritania. If I had, the news would have gone immediately to Bertrand, and then it would have been in all the newspapers within days. Just as I was about to get on the train, George suddenly smiled and walked away to talk to a beautiful, tall and fashionably dressed woman of about 30, who was standing at the ticket office with two younger women. I thought these must be his servants. You have an important person to travel with, George told me when he returned a few minutes later. That's Antoinette de Maupin. She's also going to Dresden. Paris was soon behind me. It was a long and boring journey, and I wondered if I would see Antoinette de Maupin in the dining car when I ate in the train that evening, or perhaps at breakfast the next morning. However, I didn't see the lady again until the following day, when both she and I got on the next train from Dresden to Ruritania. She was further up the train, however, and didn't see me. A few hours later, the train arrived at the Ruritanian border, where we stopped so the guards could check our passports. I was surprised when the guards stared at me and my passport for some time before letting me into the country. Once in Ruritania, I bought a newspaper and read that the king's coronation was to be in 2 days' time, which was much earlier than I had thought. The newspaper described the excitement in the country and, in particular, the capital city, Stopover, where it said all the hotels were full with people who wanted to see the event. On reading this, I decided it would be best to stop at Zenda, a small town 80 kilometers from the capital and about 10 kilometers from the border. Here, I could walk in the hills and see the town's famous castle. Then, I could take the train for the day to Stopover to see the coronation. As I got off the train at Zenda, I saw Antoinette de Maupin, who remained on the train for its journey to the capital, but she didn't look at me. I was welcomed at the inn in Zenda by an old woman who ran it with her 2 daughters. She said she wasn't very interested in what happened in the capital, but she loved the Duke of Stopover, who she called Duke Michael. He was the man who was responsible for the land around Zenda and its castle. In fact, the hotel owner said she wished the Duke was the new king and not his brother. We all know Duke Michael, she explained. He has always lived in a routine and he cares about the people, so people like him. As for the king, well, he's almost a stranger. He has been abroad for most of his life and not many people even know what he looks like. Now, the king is staying in a hunting lodge in the forest very near to Zenda. From there, he will travel to the capital for his coronation. I was interested to hear this, and I decided I would walk in the forest the next day so that I might see him. I wish he would stay there in the forest, continued the woman. People say he only likes hunting and good food. He should let the Duke become our king. And there are many others who think the same. Well, I don't like Duke Michael, said her older daughter. They say the king has red hair just like you. Many men have red hair like me, I loved. How do you know the king has red hair? The old woman asked her daughter. Jahan, the Duke's servant, told me, she explained. He has seen the king at the hunting lodge. But why is the king here if it's the Duke's land? I asked. The Duke invited him, sir, explained the old lady. The Duke in his 12th house, preparing for the coronation. So they are good friends? I don't know if you can be good friends if you want the same thing. What do you mean? Duke Michael would like to be king too, I'm sure. Well, I said, I feel quite sorry for the Duke, but it's right that the older brother becomes king. Who is talking of the Duke? Said a deep voice from outside the door. We have a guest, Jahan, called the old lady. As a man entered the room, when he saw me, he took off his hat and stepped back in surprise, as though he had seen something amazing. What's the matter, Jahan? Asked the old lady. This gentleman has come to our country to see the coronation. It's the red hair, said one of the daughters. We don't often see it in our country unless you are part of the king's family, the Ofbergs. Many of them have red hair. The man continued to stare at me, but said, Good evening, sir. I'm sorry. I didn't expect to see any new guests here. Don't worry, I said. It's late, and time I went to bed. I wish you all a good night. Thank you, ladies, for our conversation. I stood up to go to my room, when Johann suddenly said, Sir, have you ever seen our king? No, I have never seen him, but I hope to do so on Wednesday at the coronation. Johann said no more, but I felt his eyes on me as I walked up the stairs. The next morning, Johann seemed much more relaxed when he heard that I was going to Strelsau. He said I could stay at his sister's house. She was married to a wealthy trader, and she had invited him to stay with them for the coronation, but he was unable to go. I was very happy to have this opportunity and accepted his offer. So he said he would contact his sister at once and tell her to expect me that day. I decided, however, that I still wanted to see the forest where the king was staying. So first, I planned to walk for 16 kilometers through the forest to the next station along the line, where I could catch a train to the capital. I didn't tell Johann about this plan, as I didn't think it would be important if I arrived at his sister's later that day. So, I sent my luggage on to the station and said goodbye to the old lady and her two daughters, and set off up the hill toward the castle. After that, it was a short walk to get into the forest. Half an hour later, I reached the castle. It was very old, but well built, with a moat all around it. Behind it was a large modern mansion, which was used by the Duke of Strelsau as his country home. The mansion was reached by a road, but the old castle could only be reached by a drawbridge between it and the mansion. I was pleased to see that the Duke had such a well-defended house, even if he weren't to become a king. Soon, I reached the dark forest, and I walked for about an hour, pleased that the tall trees gave me cool shade. Not much sun reached the ground through the many leaves. It was a beautiful place, and after a time, I decided to rest by lying against one of the enormous trees. It was so quiet and peaceful in the forest that I soon fell into a deep sleep. Forgetting all about the train I should have caught to Strelsau and my luggage that would be waiting in the station, I was just dreaming about living in the castle of Zenda when a voice woke me. Why, look at him! It's amazing! He looks just like the king. I opened my eyes slowly and found two men looking at me. Both carried guns and were dressed for hunting. One of them was short, but looked very tough, with light blue eyes, and he looked like a soldier. The other was younger, thin, and of medium height, and he looked like a gentleman. I later found out that my guesses were both correct. The older man walked up to me and raised his hat to me politely, so I stood up. "He's about the same height as the king too," he said. "This really is extraordinary. What's your name, sir?" "Perhaps you can tell me what your names are first," I asked them. The gentleman stepped forward with a smile and said, "Of course, this is Colonel Zapt, and my name is Fred von Tannenheim. We both work for the King of Ruritania." I shook their hands and told them, "I'm Rodolph Rosendal. I'm a traveler from England, and I was an officer in the Queen's army." "Well, we are officers for our king, so we understand each other well," said Tannenheim. Rosendal," said Colonel Zapt quietly. "I know. Are you one of the Bellisdens?" "My brother is the new Lord Bellisden," I explained. "So, do I really look like the king?" "You could be twins," said Fred. Although you look like identical twins, you don't have identical personalities or skills. You two seem very different. If you were an officer for the Queen's Army Rosendal, you must be good with a sword, laughed Sabt. Is the king not a fighting man? I asked. The king likes to live well, said Fritz. Let's say he prefers eating to action, but he's a kind man, and he's our king. We would do anything for him. Perhaps we are alike then, I said, because I like to have an easy life too. At this moment, a voice came from the trees behind us. Fritz, where are you? Fritz! Fritz looked worried and then said quietly to me, It's the king. He's coming here now. A young man then came out from behind a tree in the forest and stood in front of us. As I looked at him, I gave out a loud cry, at the same time as he stood back in amazement to see me. Except, perhaps for a centimeter or two difference in height, we looked so alike that the king of Ruritania might have been me, Rolf Rosendal, and I might have been him, the king of Ruritania.